Okay, we're looking at a point that evolutionists find, they think they have a strong point of refutation of what creationists observe in microscopic life. And also, it's called irreducible complexity in microscopic life. What about regular life? Life forms that are large, all the way up through the animal kingdom and to humans. Irreducible complexity exists. They think that since they've found this flaw in their reasoning, and we've gone through this, the first part of this article, it'd be a great one to read. Here's the address right up here. You can see it. Let me move it up. Can't move it up. See if I can move it up here. There you go. Flagellum _unspun.htm. And it's a good article. I responded in blue font. You probably can't see the color blue there, but it's in brackets. So let's go to where I left off. I went to the great irony. This author writes, see, I have in brackets over here. Ignoring the investigation of the probability of the eubacterial flagellum evolving versus the estimated age of the universe versus an intelligent designer's existence is simply not scientific nor credible. In other words, what I'm trying to say, let me get a towel here. What I'm trying to say is the evidence, if you examine the evidence of what we observe, but he's coming up with emotional arguments and using debating tactics to refute what can be clearly observed here. How in the world does this bacteria operate? How did it get to the point where this very complex microscopic engine can operate so efficiently? Because if it doesn't right off the bat, it doesn't survive. He ignores that. Now, he goes on to say, this guy, the great irony of the flagellum's increasing acceptance as an icon of anti-evolution is the fact that research had demolished its status as an example of irreducible complexity almost at the very moment it was first proclaimed. He never established how that was done. The purpose of this article is to explore the arguments by which the flagellum's notoriety has been achieved. We don't care about how its notoriety or its popularity. We care about the evidence. He's ignoring that. Anyway, and to review the research developments that have now undermined the very foundations of those arguments. The argument's origins. The flagellum owes its status principally to Darwin's black box. See, he's looking at what a book a guy wrote. Well, what's inside the book? What evidence? A book by Michael Behe that employed it in a carefully crafted anti-evolution argument. Wow. Building upon William Paley's well-known argument from design. Well, that's an argument that you can't refute because you say it could have happened in a long period of time. Suppose it didn't. He never addresses that. Anyway, Behe sought to bring the argument 2 centuries forward into the realm of biochemistry. He says, like Paley, Behe appealed to his readers to appreciate the intricate complexity of living organisms as evidence for the work of a designer. And it could be. Maybe it did take a long time. Maybe it's plausible, but you don't refute the idea of a designer because you think it took a long time. Unlike Paley, however, he raised the argument to a new level, claiming to have discovered a scientific principle that could be used to prove that certain structures could not have been produced by evolution. That principle goes by the name of irreducible complexity. He keeps going around and around in circles and describing the argument presented instead of looking at the evidence. An irreducibly complex structure is defined as a single system composed of several well-matched interacting parts that contribute to the basic function wherein the removal of any one of the parts causes that system to effectively cease functioning. Okay, yeah, that's what an engine is. If you don't have one part in a car engine, like the carburetor, it doesn't work. Why would such systems present difficulties for Darwinism? And the answer is because they could not possibly have been produced by the process of evolution. And he goes in italics, quoting Behe, an irreducibly complex system cannot be produced directly by numerous successive slight modifications of a precursor system, because any precursor to an irreducibly complex system that is missing a part is by definition non-functional. It doesn't live, can't live. What's wrong with that? You don't have a carburetor. Start your engine. Sorry. Since natural selection can only choose systems that are already working, then if a biological system cannot be produced gradually, it would have to arise as an integrated unit in one fell swoop for natural selection to have anything to act on. Where's the conspiracy? That's logical. And he goes, the phrase numerous successive slight modifications is not accidental. The very same words were used by Charles Darwin in The Origin of Species in describing the conditions that had to be met for his theory to be true. Okay, fine. Were they met? Or do you have to have intermediate species? Let's keep going with what he says. As Darwin wrote, if one could find an organ or structure that could not have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, his theory would absolutely break down. By the way, Darwin, in his special organs part of his treatise, says the eye could not have been evolved. Again, see a little bit more, because the humans wouldn't be able to get around to eat. He didn't mention that. See, to anti-evolutionists, the bacterial flagellum is now regarded as exactly such a case, an irreducibly complex system which cannot be produced directly by numerous successive slight modifications, a system that could not have evolved, a desperation punch that just might win the fight in the final round, a tool with which the theory of evolution can be brought down. Yeah, why not? If you have all kinds of species out there that exist, how do they go into the next species? He doesn't mention that. Well, that's the logic of irreducible complexity. I don't find a flaw in it. How do you show where this could have taken a lot of time and partial improvements on one particular life form? How did the original life form start in the beginning? He doesn't say that either. He's just holes in his argument he ignores. So I wrote in brackets, so you do admit that there are innumerable complex structures whose detailed evolutionary origins are not known. He doesn't say that, but it's implied. Because he doesn't, if he's lack of evidence, he says, well, yeah, there are systems out there, and we don't know how they got there. All we know is it just takes a lot of time. That doesn't answer the question. Maybe it didn't take a lot of time. Have you not even considered that they may not have evolved at all? Or is that ruled out because of your personal belief system that is not based on science? That's what I'm hearing in his arguments in this very paragraph I just read. Are you stubborn about only accepting what you believe and not considering anything else? If another belief system better fits the case, why not consider it? Its plausibility. instead, you simply ignore the facts. The facts that there are complex systems out there. How did that arrive with all the flagellum? What about other theories? Well, I know something happened in this article that messed up this part here. And I also asked, ever hear of the God particle and string theory in multi-universes? But he doesn't get into that to try to explain, because other evolutionists have utilized string theory in multi-universes and so on to make their point. But he goes on to say, therefore, in fashioning an argument against evolution, one might pick nearly any cellular structure, the ribosome, for example, and claim correctly that its origin has not been explained in detail by evolution. That's what he says. Such arguments are easy to make, of course, but the nature of scientific progress renders them far from compelling. He didn't explain what that means. The lack of a detailed current explanation for a structure, organ, or process does not mean that science will never come up with one. But in the meantime, if it never comes up with one, which it never has so far in hundreds of years, you'd say, well, what about the plausibility of an intelligent designer? So you're not going to consider it. True, if you are objective, I answer. Are you? It seems that since you are largely not following the scientific method and are operating on your preferences, how many of your theories have been proved wrong over the years and replaced with ones that do no better without proving out a missing link, intermediate species? They don't show out. Oh yeah, if we have this, now here's a new theory. It's not a new theory, actually, it's a new idea. Because in theory it has to be shown to be observable, repeatable, and falsifiable. They just say, well, what about this? And it doesn't prove it anything better. He goes on to say, as an example, one might consider the question of how left-right asymmetry arises in vertebrate development, a question that was beyond explanation until the 1990s. In 1990, one might have argued that the body's left-right asymmetry could just as well be explained by the intervention of a designer as by an unknown molecular mechanism. Only a decade later, the actual molecular mechanism was identified, and any claim one might have made for the intervention of a designer would have been discarded. The same point, you don't discard it, because if an intelligent designer could have done it, if he existed, then he could have still have done it. You see, every little point, well, yeah, there's a mechanism that was identified. It doesn't explain exactly how that works. The same point can be made of who established the mechanism. It was an unknown one, and then a mechanism comes up that could work. Well, maybe that mechanism was designed by an intelligent designer. All right, see? The same point can be made, of course, regarding any structure or mechanism whose origins are not yet understood. Yeah, here I go. This does not rule out an intelligent designer, does it? Were you there to observe, repeat, and falsify? Who created the molecular mechanism? There you go. Since you did not stipulate that it evolved. Oh, that's right. You haven't a clue as to how it did evolve, if it did at all. Besides that, just because you believe something doesn't make that belief true. The earth was never flat, despite so many who believed that it was. What you do believe, and maybe even operate on, you may find out was never true. He doesn't know either way. Only future circumstances will tell. Can you think of the things you believed in as a child that did not prove to be true? Is there a supernatural Santa in your past? Wow. All right, more on this next time.